Welcome back to our series, New Year, Healthier Choices. I'm Dr. Mandy Diamond. And today our guest has many years working in behavioral health care and addiction treatment, has created so many successful programs, helped so many different individuals and their families, and has been one of the very first people to bring technology into the treatment space. And might I say, he has a wonderful wife as well. Please welcome my husband, Keenen Diamond.
Thank you, Mandy. Dr. Mandy,
You're welcome.
pleasure to be here.
Keenen, you currently are at Temecula Recovery Center where you're building a program there, correct?
Yes, I'm the administrator of Temecula Recovery Center. We have a 64-bed detox and residential program out in Temecula, California, part of the Generations Healthcare network of facilities. So as a company, we have 34 or 35 facilities in California, but we're just starting in the substance use disorder space.
Nice. So going into the new year, we all know, like so many people, the new year brings about change, reflection, goals, resolutions. What are you seeing within the treatment industry right now?
So the new year, we get resolutions, commitments to change in the new calendar year. But for us too, you get a lot of it's just the timing and the post holiday stress that leads to a lot of admissions. Families with kids in college are seeing them at home for the first long period of time in a while. And if there's been a problem at school, it may come out either through grades or seeing behaviors when they're home for Christmas break.
Mhm.
Husbands, wives, parents, whomever, a lot of alcohol centric events over the holidays, high stress, high emotions. And usually, if someone's on the edge of treatment, they're usually going to come over the edge in that holiday period, whether it's at a Christmas party or at home on Christmas Day or whatever it may be. They end up creating that bottom or close to that bottom for themselves or that issue within the family system that requires treatment. Then, of course, almost anyone will use the new year as an excuse to say, I'll go in right after the new year. And then sometimes make it look good with a resolution or a commitment that seems their own. But it's a blend for us. It is a lot of people who want to make a lifestyle change in the new calendar year, people who've got insurance for the first time, maybe this calendar year, and treatment is accessible to them. And then it's people who were hanging on for dear life
Mhm.
towards the end of last year, and the narrative fell apart over the holidays.
Do you see a difference with how many people go in with it just being a resolution base instead of an intentional positive change in their life? Or that there's a difference between the two when it comes to rethinking alcohol?
Yeah, I think resolutions are a bit fleeting. I think they're much more applicable for individuals looking to moderate their use of alcohol or to maybe have a dry January or to spend the year 2026 looking at their consumption, maybe reduce a certain amount, set a goal, maybe figure out a system to hold them accountable to that goal, whether that's monitoring or a therapist or a case manager or a combination of the two. I think the resolutions play a role in wellness. I think when it comes to the commitment of going through therapy and an absolute lifestyle change into an abstinence based recovery program, that it requires a deeper intention or else it's not going to be sustainable. So that's what we've seen over the years is resolutions are meaningful and great, but more for the sake of improving wellness, moderation when maybe we're not quite at the point of requiring treatment or diagnostically meeting the standards for an inpatient stay. But when it comes to that individual that's really gone that far with their drug or alcohol use, then it takes a willingness and an internal motivation and intention that's beyond, I think, a resolution.
Why do you think so many people at the beginning of a new year reassess their relationship with alcohol?
I think some of it's everything we just talked about. I think a lot of people just finished a good like 2, 3 week bender. Even people with maybe moderate alcohol issues, not necessarily would diagnostically be dependent, certainly not severe. They're just coming off of a period of very alcohol centric events. Again, pre holiday Christmas parties, everything you're doing, the holidays themselves, then you go right into the new year. And then, you know, who knows what the next holiday is. Football, college football, there's all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of reasons to consume alcohol over that calendar period of the month of December. So I think that there's a lot of people that just want to feel a bit better. So the idea of a dry January, a healthier January is a good idea. And there's people that maybe are wondering if they do have a problem. And one good way to test that theory is to try to stop or moderate. And if you're absolutely unable to, then, that's probably pretty good indication you need to dive a little further into your relationship with alcohol.
I see a lot of times it's based on the awareness because until you're aware, like, oh, this is how alcohol is negatively affecting me, or this is like how much I'm actually drinking and what I want to change. Like the awareness is key in being able to set either a resolution or a goal and it be intentional. You can't set like an intentional goal, in my opinion, unless you like have the awareness of why is this a goal that you're setting for yourself or a resolution or why you're wanting change. And I think that awareness is developed a lot of times through the breaks in the process, especially with alcohol, and noticing like, wow, my sleep was dysregulated or my moods were different. I didn't feel well. And then you remove that substance, you remove alcohol, even if it's for a short period of time, or you lower the intake and you start gaining awareness of, wow, I feel so much better. My anxiety's less. I feel happier. I'm sleeping better. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. There has to be, if you don't have an identified problem, you're not going to come up with a solution or a goal around it. There has to be something that either internally or maybe socially, it could be a movement or you're participating with a group of friends or coworkers or something in some sort of wellness effort over the month. Like I have a group of friends that always take New Year's to the Super Bowl off from drinking,
Yeah.
have since college. That's just their deal. Some of them are might qualify for treatment. Some of them are very infrequent drinkers, but no matter what, they've done this group thing where it's shut it down, get healthy, feel better, sleep better. And then also you become more aware of the role that alcohol plays in all of those systems. How does it play into your relationship? What does it do to your body? What does it do to your sleep and the way you're feeling? And I think the other interesting thing is a lot of people can't imagine. It's funny because it's only one thing, right? But a lot of people can't imagine life without alcohol. But there are a lot of people in the world and a lot of people in the United States of America and a lot of people wherever you live that don't drink alcohol, whether that's for recovery reasons or religious reasons or just their own personal beliefs or wellness, whatever it may be. There are people that don't consume alcohol, and a lot of people realize the ones without maybe that don't need to look into the issue further realize that oh, the month was pretty good without alcohol. I had a good time. I did some fun stuff. I didn't need to Uber or have a designated driver. I didn't have any hangovers. My skin looks better. I feel better. I didn't do some of the things that people do when they drink, whether that's smoking cigarettes or doing some drugs or whatever it may be. All those things play into the lifestyle as well. So, yeah, I think you have to know the problem. The challenge is that when there's really a problem, this is a disease of the brain, and your brain is going to tell you there isn't a problem. So I think that is true for people who are, again, looking at that wellness journey, have the self awareness to acknowledge that they'd like to try to not drink. But when the drinking is severely problematic, and again, diagnostically, they belong probably in an inpatient treatment center to get some work done, that's just not applicable the same way.
How do you see that support systems, creating structure are valuable to someone that may not have an alcohol use disorder, or maybe they do, but right now they're looking at implementing a change with their relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I think there's things you can learn from the continuum of care and treatment, and I almost think you can go backwards. Stuff that our clients do at the towards the end of their treatment process, like case management, recovery coaching, life coaching, therapy, monitoring, are great things to look at. Some of the best evidence about how to abstain and remain abstinent from alcohol comes from the studies done with pilots over the years, where if you go to treatment and you're monitored quantitatively with a device, something like a Sober Sure bracelet is probably the best one on the market right now, but something like that's discreet, that holds you accountable with quantifiable data, that in concert with some therapy or some sort of support and a social system that's supportive. That social system could be dedicated to recovery, like the 12 steps, could be church based, could just be a group of friends that do some healthy stuff every week, right? Go on bike rides or play volleyball or do something else. But that social support, that therapeutic support, and then accountability will help you stay sober. You can also gamify it to some extent, make it fun. Look at your band. If you have that Sober Sure, look at your band, look at your app. How many days in a row can you go? How get to 30, maybe you want to hit 60. Get to 60, maybe I should do 120. Get to 120, maybe I should do a year. Then maybe you reflect back on that year and you say, my relationships are better, my body's better, everyone likes me more, I have more friends, I'm doing more things. Maybe I'll go for another year and see what it's like. And that's how a lot of, I think, plans for moderation, or in our world, kind of risk management for individuals who are not completely addicted to the substance happen, is by making it fun, by being accountable, and by doing it with other people.
It's small, consistent changes because that's what
Yeah.
works with anything. You don't build a house overnight. You have to establish a foundation and you build on that. It's these small steps create lasting change and sustainable change. And what you were saying, like with the Sober Sure band, I love the Sober Sure band because it does help give data, and it can be that part where you're looking at small changes and then building on those and having the accountability, building structure. And it's the same with building support networks and building support groups or whatever is going to be a part of your structure. You do that in small shifts. You don't just create a whole social network overnight. You build on that. And by creating a strong structure for yourself, strong routine for yourself, start building up these support networks around you. The small changes help turn into like really long-term changes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one day at a time. And not only do the small changes, that's where you have to start and that's what adds up, but it does start a bit of a snowball effect at a certain point where your gains are just so much bigger every day. In the beginning, it can be slow and frustrating, but then you get there. And I think when you look at how you change almost anything in 2026 now, there's technology involved, right? If you want to look at your sleep, you buy an Aura ring, or now it's incorporated in the Apple Watch. But you want to work on your peak fitness capacity, you get a wearable, right? So that's something I encourage anyone looking at anything to do, is what's out there that can, one, support you, two, hold you accountable, and three, maybe gamify this a little bit so that the challenge is in front of you, because people love challenges, and especially when they're in that sort of investigatory phase of the journey. Different when you're in treatment. When someone's needing the services that we do, we're not in that recovery. We're not in moderation. We're not trying to just do a little better every day. We're in crisis. We're in a point where life is not sustainable at the current consumption rates of alcohol or the current use of the drug that that our clients are on. And we're in the depths of the disease of addiction, not in recovery or wellness. So it looks a little different in treatment. But as you come out of treatment, then you start engaging more in that recovery and that wellness component. And I think that's something I hope happens more in the future. And I think it is, as we're destigmatizing addiction and alcoholism. And we just look at that relationship with alcohol as a wellness component, right? And a reduction in alcohol doesn't necessarily mean you're like got a DWI or you're drinking way too much or you're not doing what you need to do at work or at home. It simply means that you're making a choice from a wellness perspective, which is obviously a huge movement right now. That is part of peace, because it's true. If you want to work on sleep, you want to do the best thing you can for your sleep. Don't have 4 glasses of wine at dinner.
Yeah.
That's probably the best thing that you can do to make that Aura ring you just bought give you a better sleep score.
Absolutely. Where do you see, because I know Sober Sure, the band really helps establish accountability, because not only is it giving you factual information, but you're picking who you want to see that information. Like it's whoever from your support network, your psychologist, your psychiatrist, your mom, your dad, your wife, husband, who is going to be your accountability check person to get the data. So, how do you see where accountability comes in for anyone, whether they're in treatment, whether they're just doing dry January, whether they're just wanting to lower their alcohol intake? Where do you see the accountability playing out in that?
I think it's crucial. I think it's Pollyanna-ish to think that everyone or anyone has the willpower and the self-control to do the right thing at all times when no one's looking, right? I think if your job never checked on whether or not you logged into your computer or did anything, you'd probably start not doing anything at work and just taking your paycheck. If you were never accountable to other parts of your life, your spouse, your job, you're not accountable to your fitness regimen, things change in your body. But without accountability, I don't think that we can maintain or sustain the change, at least for a while, till it becomes maybe habit and it's just ingrained in who you are. And then you can maybe become your own accountability person. But I still think you don't see that in one. I still think that's why an Apple Watch, and how many people do you hear talk about their steps? I think even people that are relatively active on an inactive day are trying to close their rings. They're still being accountable, even though that's not going to anyone but themselves. They're still being accountable to that number. But there's some gaming going on right there too. Did a good job getting everyone addicted to closing their rings. It's a pretty good addiction, but it becomes a compulsion. And then maybe you need to be accountable to someone about that down the road. I don't know, but I think you need accountability to be good. That's why monitoring for alcohol works. Whether you're trying to reduce what you're doing and you want to show that you're not drinking, say, 5 days a week, or you're not getting overly intoxicated, or you're just drinking on Saturday nights, or you're not drinking when you travel, whatever the rules or your own goals or your recommended goals from your loved ones are, without any accountability, I think you're just going to do whatever you're going to do anyway.
It makes it easier to have accountability, because when you know that you have to be accountable to someone and you learn to be accountable to yourself, I think it makes it easier to achieve your resolution or achieve your goals or whatever change that you're trying to implement. Sometimes I think in the world of addiction treatment, or when you're trying to change your relationship specifically with alcohol, a lot of times accountability can feel like a punishment instead of a support. And I think shifting that, like where accountability is something that is actually positive and accountability is helpful, instead of feeling that it is this negative and feeling as though it's increasing this stigma, because there is such a huge stigma around alcohol. I think it's becoming less and less because people are either becoming more sober curious, they're noticing the negatives with alcohol, and they're just wanting to change their lifestyle. So there's less of a stigma around being an alcoholic or having an alcohol use disorder. But with accountability, I think that actually helps remove the stigma instead of increasing it.
Yeah, as long as you pick the right accountability person and then the approach is correct. And I think when it comes to changing anything, you have to be realistic and you have to be gentle with yourself. And your accountability person has to, especially when it comes to alcohol, it's hard because it's a lot of fear usually built into these accountability pieces. Like someone either has had a DWI or maybe they drove a little too drunk with the kids in the car, or they acted a little erratically at home, or something where people are worried that zero sum game of sober or it's the end of the world comes into play. When really, say you wanted to try to go a year without drinking and you've been drinking way too much and you've had some negative consequences, but not to the point where you're detox in residential care, but to the point where maybe you've talked about, and you say, I'm not going to drink in 2026. But in 2025, you probably drank 320 of the 365 days. Okay. If that person drank once a month, even though their goal was to not drink, if that person drank once a month and had 12 episodes of drinking in one whole calendar year, after basically being somewhat intoxicated daily, or at least having 2 to 3 drinks a day for almost the entire previous year, yes, there's a conversation to be had about what happened collaboratively, but that's a pretty good win. That's a huge reduction.
Yes.
And I think that's what gets lost sometimes with alcohol is it has to become, and for some people it does. There are people diagnostically who any amount of alcohol it's going to go pretty badly pretty quickly. And we've seen that in the treatment world. But there are lots of people who have been maybe abusers of alcohol, non-alcohol dependent. Maybe they're appropriate for intensive outpatient or something like that, but not the work that we do. But we hold them to the same standard where significant advances in risk management and decreases aren't celebrated if there's use in between. And that's a huge accomplishment. If you cut that in half again the next year and you drank 6 times, now you're talking maybe just at the same holidays you get off from work, you have a drink. And that's probably going to be a lot better for your body, for your family, for any of the problems that got you to the point where you were looking at alcohol. But I think there has to be a mechanism to quantify the use, something like the monitoring, like we've talked about, because without that, it's he said, she said. It's if you wake up and you're tired and your eyes are glossy, someone may think you drank, or if you're exhausted at a work function, someone may think you were drunk. But there's a whole bunch of reasons, and then you have to spend the whole year defending yourself. It feels it's hard on both sides. So there's two pieces to it. One is I think it's not a zero sum game when you're talking about a reduction strategy or moderation or wellness and just investigating your relationship with alcohol. And then you need to be able to measure it both as a reward and a defense, and also so that your accountability person, if that is, say, your spouse, maybe steps back a little bit
Or
and believes
not.
in you and gives you the feeling like you can do it, and then let the data speak for itself. And I think from there you can have a much more higher success rate, and you can have a much better relationship because you're no longer policing at that point.
Yeah.
You're working together towards a common goal, and you're making the device be the police, and then you're having really well thought through informed conversations if there is a use episode about what that means. And that goes back to what your original strategy and goal was.
What is one actionable step or one mindset shift that the people that are watching this, you could give them for the journey that they're currently on?
The journey they're on or the journey they may go on.
Either one, if they're thinking right now, they're sober curious and they're like, maybe I want to give up alcohol for starting now moving forward, or they've already started it at the very beginning of January?
Yeah. Look, I think if you take wellness aside, take skin, sleep, you're joining friends, which is something you do every year for fun, dry January, take that group aside. If you are intentionally looking at your relationship with alcohol or looking to reduce it because in your mind you think it may be a problem, it's not just in your mind. If you've gotten to that point in the thinking process, your relationship with alcohol is having negative effects in your life and in the lives of those around you. Stay committed to what you're doing and be open minded to the fact that this may be a longer term lifestyle change. And for those just testing it out, I think there's a lot of great strategies right now. There's a lot of ways to have fun. There's a lot more people than ever not drinking. There's a lot more events without alcohol. There's tons of interesting beverages out there that can mock. Go out with your friends. If they're having a beer, grab an athletic brewing company and go zero alcohol and something that's been intentionally made for this exact type of person, intentionally interesting and fun without alcohol, and just take that mindset forward. Don't make too big a deal out of it. If you are just cutting back, then cut back. Like, it's not, I think sometimes the stigma comes from this need to make it all bigger than it. If you want to stop,
Progress, not
stop.
perfection.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
And if you're having a
remember,
problem, ask for help. Like, get find a resource, look at NAATP.org and look at the vetted treatment providers and find a really good accredited treatment center that can help guide you through the initial process if you're unable to do it on your own, or if you find yourself in the attempt to stop having medical challenges, seek emergency care right away, because if you are consuming enough alcohol, you can't safely stop on your own. So that's the only other thing I would tell people. If you've been drinking hard, you probably should get some medical advice before just jumping into dry January head first.
thank you so much for sharing the wisdom that you have with us. For everyone else, remember it is New Year, make healthy choices, and remember that meaningful change happens over time, not all at once.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Bye.